This is the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is exactly 9 a.m. If we would like to stand and pledge allegiance to the flag, please. We have a very interesting agenda this morning. And, we've established a quorum. We have all of the members of the Budget and Finance Committee are in the room and at the table. I want to propose to present the meetings from the September the 19th. Are there any changes or additions to it? If not, we're going to forward them for approval. The first item on our agenda this morning is one that is of great interest to all of us. And I'm going to introduce Mr. Bill Schwend. He's going to do a presentation this morning on credit card and credit card fees. Mr. Schwend.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Hope all is well. Security alert. We've been hacked. All right. Let me see if this is going good. All right. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about credit card fees today and how they affect our budget and what we're doing here at Sun City West. So 2011 is really when we got started very, very actively dealing with taking credit cards at all of our locations, dealing what we're doing and trying to move away from collecting of cash at rec centers and other places where we have point of sale systems, right? It's a convenience to our members and staff. It was much felt that way. We get our money sooner and more efficiently. Cash tends to grow legs at times, so we want to make sure we're doing everything as efficiently as we know how. It's safer and it's much less exposure to our staff members working for us in a part-time basis and remote sites, those types of things, and getting from point A to point B. And it eliminates risks of getting bad checks and chasing those down and dealing with that kind of issue. But it really paves the way now in today's market when it comes to digital enhancements, phone apps, and those kinds of things that we're seeing and more than likely are going to see a lot more of in the future. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there is currently a bill at the national level relative to these surcharges and how things are dealt with at the banking level. So this is an ever-changing area that we're kind of dabbling in, but it's not really all that simple to navigate. So in front of us now is something called the Credit Card Competition Act of 2023. So the Congress is dealing with that on how shop owners like ourselves and others are charged when customers swipe their credit cards. Right now, Visa, MasterCard typically have the lock on the system, and how those charges get processed, get passed down to us. As you're well aware, and I know probably if we checked everybody's pocket, we got credit cards and we're getting bonuses for 2% back on spending, or we're getting miles on airlines, and none of that comes for free, right? So the banks have realized that, and it's $1 billion industry, but they're charging you to get you to use your cards, and you're getting gifts in return. So that's being addressed at the Congress level. And so this is an ever-changing little market that we're in right now, but they know what we're facing. A lot of other people are too, and it's not pleasant. So they are trying to correct this. So what we know now when it comes to the law is we have to notify our clients of our intent to use a surcharge, right? It's got to be very plainly written on display, not disguised in fine print and that type of thing. So if we implement this surcharge program, we have to be way, way out in front on that so people understand what they're doing when they use their card. They have to have the option to either use cash or a check or some other means not to use a credit card if they don't want to pay a surcharge. Surcharges are not legal to charge on debit cards. So some people don't may not know if they're pulling a debit card or a credit card out of their pocket. There's a lot of confusion going on there. We see that on a daily basis in membership. So if we want to run any kind of service charge on that, again, we cannot do it on debit cards, strictly limited to credit card transactions. So you can't make a profit off these things. You can't charge any more than 3%, but again, the law stipulates that you cannot make a profit with your surcharging. So again, list of separate line items. If we do an invoice, whether we're sending out invoices to people on a membership side, as far as their annual dues go, there really has to be a specific line in that invoice depicting if you're going to pay by credit card, pay over the phone, or pay by a portal, there potentially could be an additional surcharge. And, 2.5%, 3% on $540 this year is sizable when people are concerned about how much annual dues they are paying. So it also impacts our IT system and operational challenges for us. Obviously, there's programming costs that we have to deal with because we have we're not a one point of sale system. We have a lot of different angles and touch points when it comes to the recreation centers. Additional customized programming when we go to doing our upgrades is quite cumbersome due to the fact of, when we use TEG for most of our operational systems, when they go to operate, there is a lot of customized programming that is affected by that. And so it's really not an easy flip of the switch overnight. Hey, let's upgrade, boom, turn your computers off. The upgrade happens, you turn them on in the morning and everything's running correctly. A lot of work goes into that. It's pretty impressive actually to be able to do what we do, but it does take time. The future apps, phones, I talked about a little earlier, but those are credit card driven. It's kind of the way of the future. And then when we got to deal with staff training when it comes to point of sale refunds, processing cash at recreation centers poses problems and those types of things that are going to be out there. So when it comes to who's using fees or credit cards anyway, about 51% come through membership and 44% of our golf use is dealing with that when it comes to how we process our fees. Current collections are about $36 million. 63% of that is via credit card. So back in 2011, we were pushing people that direction, trying to make things more streamlined, more comfortable, and more advantageous for any and all, both our side and the customer side. And so we're getting to a point now where, we're really growing that, and it really is the shape of the future. 32% of our payments coming in these days are still in the form of check and 5% via cash. But when it comes to surcharging and subsidizing and those types of things, when we charge our annual fees, there are a lot of administrative and sectional items that we deal with that are all covered by your annual due, right? From administrative costs, whether there are wages, whether there are insurance benefits, how we handle CC&Rs, dues, processing, and banking fees are included there. But also included in our annual dues are how we subsidize and pay for electricity and arts and craft clubs. All the electricity needed to keep people cool in 120-degree weather, utilizing recreation centers, utilizing clubs, kilns, saws and wood shops, all the apparatus and metal shops. That's all accounted for and brought into our annual dues as far as a form of support. A lot of people may not use swimming pools, but their annual dues go to offset the cost of maintaining those, right? The old adage is, there's 3 drains in the bottom of a swimming pool. One's for water, 2's for money. They're expensive to operate, and whether you use them or not, they are there for the benefit of the entire association, and so they are subsidized. But the bottom of this slide really kind of tells the story, I think, where if you take that $100 or $540 and divide that by a daily fee, it's $1.48. That's what it costs to live here on a daily basis, subsidizing all of these wonderful activities and facilities that we do have. And 6 cents of that $1.48 goes to cover our current banking fees. So it's a very, very small percentage, but it is built into, the annual dues of folks living here, right? So regarding membership, we're doing $23 million in payments annually, and 53% of that's credit card. The other half is checks, and just a little bit of that is cash. That could change a little bit if we were to do a surcharge of $25 on top of a charge like that, or $30, whatever that percentage kind of works out to be. We hear it loudly when we talk about the raising of fees and what it costs to live here. We get that. The price of gasoline doesn't just affect us, it affects everybody. So when you fill up your tank for $5 a gallon, definitely there's an eyebrow going up. Same thing with electrical costs, same thing with gasoline, same thing with a lot of the built-in infrastructure needs that we have. So relative to golf, 11 million annually, bringing in 88% of that is credit cards. 1% check and 11% cash. So again, it's an advantage to all of our staff, and I think of the users, to be able to pay with a credit card. It's very convenient, and it just kind of helps us along the way. If we increase our yearly costs relative to dealing with cash, getting away from credit cards, or charging surcharges that are going to make me force people to rethink if they're going to use their card or not, there's some security issues that we really need to address, and that is how we get from point A to point B, right? We have a courier system currently delivering money to either back to the association on a daily basis or on weekends over to the bank. That is sizable. If that amount of cash goes up a little bit, again, there's a little bit of issue there that I think we really need to pay attention to and focus a little bit more on security. Obviously, we talked about IT programming and what that would take as far as new hardware and licensing when it comes to various types of how we're dealing with cash or point of sale systems throughout our association. Bank charges do not go away with cash and check. They still charge us money. And then the labor involved in counting cash and dealing with the amount of cash that potentially could come in requires, a dual counting system to be completely accountable and making sure we're doing well when it comes to our auditing and supervision in that line. So there's a little bit of an impact there. So security needs for protection, bank fees increases with more checks and cash, additional labor, and again, the big one in my view really is the increased exposure to our staff when we're dealing with cash. It's just not where we want to put people. And then the time to process a point of sale, I think, really gets affected if you're dealing with cash as opposed to, a bunch of people trying to check in for tea time and get out on the golf course and do those kinds of things. It's somewhat time sensitive. No one wants to be hanging out in line and doing that kind of thing. Back in the day, I don't have the date on that. Katie, do you have a date on that picture? Okay, so we have been hit in the past, not fun, but a long time ago. We haven't really had that now, but exposure is an issue if we're dealing with a lot of cash on site. Transaction time, we talked about. Member credit and the check writing liability that we've got, chasing bad checks. Sometimes people sign checks and they're at closed accounts, or they don't sign them or fill them out correctly. I think we received one the other day it was supposed to be for $2,400 and they wrote 24, and that's what we got. So again, it's just tracking those people down, making sure everything's handled correctly. The cash handling and the dual control system I talked about, debit versus credit, what card are you using and do you know? And then really the volume of traffic that we've got. And I'm not sure if you're aware yet, I don't see anybody wearing a lovely pin, but we've got buttons now on the Be Kind program, man, because our frontline staff do take an awful lot of abuse. And it's not their fault. It's, we don't take cash at recreation centers, yet they get abused nose to nose about that. Yes, it's legal tender, but I'm sorry, but we don't take cash. But, the verbal abuse that people take, whether you're a starter at the golf course or you're working as a monitor at the recreation center or the gals up front, it can get pretty nasty at times. And we're doing everything we can just to kind of get that media out there and just kind of hopefully everybody starts treating each other with just a little bit more respect. So the unknown, again, bad debt and bounce checks, customer service issues, the efficiency and time. The public golf rates are very, very competitive. So if we, kind of focus on cash and looking at the dollar rates here and there, a couple of dollars can make a difference when it comes to where people are going to play, as far as outside play coming in, which is a big advantage to us. We like that. It's a great financial advantage. to keep our costs low, bringing in that extra, it's about a little over $2 million with outside play. But I certainly wouldn't want to chase anybody away for a matter of $2, $3, or $5. It's possible that could happen, and I'd really not like to see that. And then it does affect merchandise and food sales. You know, if you don't want to use a credit card and you want to use cash, if you don't have the appropriate cash on you, you know, is that extra pitcher of beer coming or not? Would you buy a hat? I'll think about it. I'll come back later. I don't have cash on me. But credit cards allow people to do a little bit more merchandising, I guess you want to call it, or spending if that is available to you, and not having to pay additional surcharges. So again, key point, exposure and safety, from my perspective, is key. And you know, going surcharging and more cash, those types of things, is kind of going in the wrong direction as far as what society is really doing. And just kind of where are we going? So staff kind of got together, and kind of the Pandora's box here is, if we start charging surcharges for the use of cards, you know, what else are we going to try to subsidize, or what can we subsidize, right? Not everybody uses a swimming pool. So the owner members that do, potentially, are we going to surcharge them to use the pool to help offset the cost of maintenance on a swimming pool when 3/4 of the people don't ever check in, you know? So it goes back to, we're all in this together. We all throw our annual dues in the pot to make sure this association is running properly. And I think we're very proud to say that we continue to remain in the top 10 nationally as far as a golf community, as far as a retirement community. We're out there. We are kind of the leaders of the pack when it comes to this. And you know, kind of what direction do you really kind of want to go? Again, the federal folks are going to be looking at what these surcharges are all about, maybe restricting those. That's kind of something to come. You know, if that legislation changes, you know, where are we going to go? And then, you know, we're kind of potentially going back, if we start taking cash, or people don't want to pay because of the surcharge. You know, the credit cards kind of help take this payment program away from us, where folks are coming in and they want to make payment programs as far as paying up front and in whole when it comes to their annual dues. A credit card kind of allows them that. Yeah, they're going to pay some interest on that, but if they can't afford the $540 today, they could at least on a credit card do that and then work on paying that back at their own leisurely time. But we have been working with people on payment plans, but that has gone away, and I'm not sure we want to kind of go back into that. This is a very kind of busy slide, but it really does tell a story. And Katie, I don't know if you want to answer any questions on this, but when it comes to all of the point of sale systems that we've got all over the place, and how we're dealing with credit cards, where and what we do, this kind of shows a little bit of a picture as to the complexity of everything that we got going on.
Yeah, sure. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just to give you an overview, one of the great things about this software, and also one of the downsides, is how flexible it is and how customized it is. It allows us everything from having a resident portal that the public can also access and make tee times, but not see the owner members' rec card numbers. It allows us to check in people at facilities when there's no dollars trading hands. It allows a lot more back office users. So there's a lot of customization that went into it, which was hugely beneficial because we didn't have to get unintegrated pieces and parcel them together. But it does make it these kinds of questions. So for example, we take credit cards at certain locations, but not at others. We take member credit at certain locations, not at others. At the library, they have volunteers running the TEI system just to check people in and log that transaction, so we know how many people are using the library. If they pay their fines, they're paying it in cash. They're volunteers, so they don't take credit and they don't take cash for any kind of check-ins or guests. The Sports Pavilion will take credit cards, allow you to check in, allow you to put member credit on there, but they have their bowling software, which is completely separate. Brunswick will not integrate, and so we actually have two different systems down there, one for Lizard Acres, one for the Sports Pavilion. Up at membership, of course, we have all those different payment types. So it just depends on where you are and what kind of payment you can make right now, whether you could put member credit on your account, and who's working behind that counter. And so if we do a surcharge, it brings into question, how does it affect not the association, but each individual location. Are we going to surcharge credit cards across the board? Are we only going to do it at membership? And is that going to force people or encourage them to go to another location where we don't have surcharges on it? Or will they put money on member credit, turn around and use that member credit to pay their dues? And they can do that member credit perhaps at a location where we don't have a surcharge. So it's not as simple as, hey, we're Bob's Variety, we have 3 cash registers and we're going to put a surcharge across every transaction. We have some that are service items, we have some that are sales items that we inventory. So it's, if we go down this path, we just need to be aware there's a lot of policy decisions we need to decide in terms of where the surcharge will take place, who will accept cash, who will accept credit, and what members can and can't do now with that member credit. If we're going to allow them to put on member credit and not surcharge it, they then can't turn around and use that member credit to pay their dues if the intent is not to allow them to use their credit card to pay dues. So it's kind of this convoluted web, if that makes sense. But that's kind of the overview. I can answer any specific questions you may have. I just wanted to put something visually so you can see how diverse our different locations are.
And I'll just conclude by, back in 2011, when this started, I think our bank fees on credit card and swiping was in the vicinity of about $330,000. Over the course of the last 10 or 12 years, it has inched up, to a little over $600,000 at this point. Again, it's a cost of doing business. It's the same thing to me as a utility, whether it's the cost of gasoline, whether it's, piping in electricity and those types of things that we're facing. And that has been, again, incorporated into annual dues along the way. And annually, the more credit cards get used, the more we pay. But I'm in hope that, this new bill in front of our Congress can kind of help alleviate some, if not a lot, of what we're dealing with. So I'm going to leave that for the committee to discuss, and your recommendations, whether today or further down the line, go to our governing board. And as we approach our administrative budget procedures that kind of kick off in January, we'll see what the recommendation and the direction that the governing board and you all want us to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwind. I would like to ask the committee if they have any questions of Mr. Schwind. Christine?
Trying a new, is this on?
Mm-hmm.
Trying a different microphone. Thank you all again. We've heard the same or very similar information several times from you guys. So if I look a little confused, I'm trying to pull out why are we repeating ourselves over and over, but I do appreciate you guys reiterating your concerns, I really do, and putting some more meat on the bones. So my questions, go back to, just real quick, Lee, you might have covered some of this, or Cliff did last time, Bill, but on page 13, we talk about membership having $23 million in payments annually, et cetera. Rather than just doing a quick run of the numbers, I know that there's a lot more than just the membership owner dues in there. Could you break out for us, or do you have handy? We went through this last time, but how much of this is our annual, the membership fees that we all pay in dues? How much of this is the ACF fee, the asset transfer fee, and how much is everything else?
The APF fees are typically coming from title companies.
Right.
Those are typically either automatic transfers or check.
Right, but the $23 million in payments annually,
Mm-hmm.
and we have 53 million that are credit card. Maybe just break out for that then. Sorry, 53%.
There you go.
I didn't have enough coffee. 53% are by credit card. Of those that are by credit card, right? How much are our member dues versus everything else?
On that 23?
Of the 53% of the payments that are via credit card, because we can just do that. What else is in there? It's probably a small amount, but do we have?
I would say a very high percentage is your annual dues,
Right.
540.
Right.
So if I were to take, I don't have a calculator with me, but
No
take
need
that-
to.
Take that
I wanted to
540
know.
divided into that 23, that would give you your.
Because there's so much more that goes into
individuals on
that.
the deeds.
That's the other thing that we've learned, right?
On that 23?
Whatever the APFs are annually, so reduce that by that, because that's pretty much the bulk of
Yeah,
it.
most of the APFs come in by
Disclosure's only a
check or
couple
by
hundred
bank
bucks.
transfer. The next page, so we don't know, but we can assume that the vast majority of the 53% are our, right?
Annual dues.
That the rest of this, whatever else goes into what's bucketed as membership, things like tickets and tours and so forth, it's a minor amount, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Next page, similar, right, where we're looking at golf, most of the payments are by credit card, which I get. Where would we account for member credit? Is that considered payments via cash by this percentage?
In that, Terry?
Member credit is bought either by cash or check or credit card. So that would be included in that if they purchased member credit at golf.
If they use member credit at golf to pay for their round?
Yeah, so then there would be, it's a small percentage. We can pull that out. This was just payments, how payments were made at golf. Not
I
how
see.
things were
Not how the actual monies are collected, but rather
Correct.
what's being processed by the point of sale.
Yes.
Thanks. Let's see. I think that was all. Thank you. In terms of for now, I just wanted to also call out for anybody who's listening in, there's a page on here with tough questions. I feel compelled to say that there was nobody on the Budget and Finance Committee of this year or the year prior who ever suggested a surcharge for anything other than credit card use. I just wanted to go on record as saying that. So if anybody's listening and thinking that we're coming up with all kinds of other revenue sources, we, the residents, are not. Right? We were only looking at how do we chip away at that fee. So thank you.
We were just, if we open the door, we expect we will get questions like that. That's why that was included. But absolutely, you guys did not bring that up. We just wanted to try to predict any loopholes that might come up down the road.
I have a question, Dick.
Mr. Parsons?
Yes, slide 15. Do we know what the costs of these things are, and are some of them just one-time setups, and then, what is the ongoing cost of these things?
Some could be. I mean, it's really, when it comes to professional security, and if we need basic assistance to get from our facility to the bank, armored car service, I think Cliff was researching into that. We don't really have numbers in this, but we know that there would be some kind of yearly cost increase dealing with some of this stuff. Some is a one-time for sure, but bank charges continue, labor continues, licensing, those types of things kind of fall into place as well. But no, we don't have a number to throw at you today as far as that goes, because we don't really know what direction we're going.
The one unknown we haven't explored is if you want to accept a surcharge at events where the tickets are done and at tours and scheduling for like the All Aboard America, those are not integrated. They're separate POS systems, so I haven't talked to those vendors, don't know if they could do a surcharge, how that would work. And so IT programming, we're not just looking at the TEI one. And then the IT hardware and licensing really is if you need an additional POS license due to a backup, say, at one of the locations, or if you want to have a paid staff person at the library, if you're going to start accepting credit cards and surcharge there. So they're just unknowns depending on how we want to do it policy-wise.
Okay. All right. Mr. Miller?
Bill, I asked you this at the torch class the other day, and I'll ask again. Christine put this a good way about what can we do to chip away at the costs, and we've had a lot of comments about electronic checks.
Mm-hmm.
So part of this, if I could take an electronic check and pay my member dues, and there's not all these surcharges, that goes a long way towards chipping away at the cost. So, we started having these discussions about e-checks last year. And I know this is one of those proprietary software things where we're kind of at the mercy of the company, but can't we get a firm timeline about when that's going to happen?
I'm going to defer to Katie, and we're working on it, but yes.
Yeah, so as Bill alluded to earlier, we did go through a rough upgrade this last time, and the base kernel of the software upgraded fine. It's that specialized programming. So like I mentioned, at one point, we had fivesome, so we had them programmed for fivesums. Another point, we want to use it for facilities to check in and not take any money. So special programming there to autocomplete these $0 transactions when you check into the spa or the fitness center. If you're in golf, it opens up at a tee sheet. If you're in membership, it opens up from the property screen. If you're in facilities, it opens up at just a simple POS with those buttons on the bottom. So all of that is specialty programming. It's great because it makes it easy for our end users, and that was part of the consideration, is the technology capabilities, may not be there. So a lot of programming and specialty programming went into that, which is good and bad. When you do an upgrade, some of that stuff conflicts with some of the new things they put in place. So for example, they had put in some programming to not have a paper print. If you wanted to opt out of having paper receipts, every time you check out, you get an email. Well, that caused some issues because they didn't test in every single environment. We tested as much as we could, but knowing it in our live environment, which is pretty complex, as I showed you, some of that stuff didn't carry forward. So we're trying to troubleshoot, work out those issues before we move on to something new. E-check is going to be very simple when we get it done. They have it in place, they have it with other folks, but we aren't going to jump in that boat till we get these other ones fixed. So it's close, but I can't say how close until I get this other stuff resolved, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, but it doesn't answer my question.
It doesn't. I would say 2 months.
Okay.
2 months would hold me to that. With that said, forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, give me 2 months. Okay. I don't think it will impact much of the behavior on the portal. I think most people are going to use their credit cards because they want the bennies. We hear that all day long. So it's great, and we should do it, and we will do it, but I don't think behavior is going to change much.
Well, I went and people who may have been watching on YouTube may have seen me scrolling my phone, so I went and looked up your Credit Card Competition Act, and it's sitting in the Senate, and it is bipartisan sponsored, Republicans and Democrats. Given where we are with politics in D.C. right now, whether it'll pass or not, who heck knows? Okay, so, I guess my comment would simply be, I wouldn't count on that passing. And if it doesn't, then we're kind of right back where we were before. So I think, again, going down this pathway to starting the process, as Christine called it, to chip away with the e-checks and other things is really the right thing to do. And I would really encourage you to expedite that process as much as possible.
Mr. Bernardo?
Thank you, Dick. Terry, can we go to slide number 8, please? There was one thing that I wanted to point out with this particular slide that I think it just doesn't tell the full story. That first little paragraph there, when drafting an invoice and tallying up transactions, you cannot add the surcharge to the total cost of the service. And I think that misses the point that the surcharge is already built into Sun City West's cost for service. In other words, when someone comes in and goes to the golf shop and pays with a credit card, the cost to cover that credit card is built into the greens fee. Putting another way, for every $100 that the rec center takes in credit card transactions, they're actually only getting perhaps about $97.50 because the rec center has to net out the cost of that credit card fee. So it's already built into the total cost of service to the consumer. It's just not broken out separately. As far as the rest of this document, I mean, I'll certainly acknowledge that it's full of reasons as to why the community shouldn't do this. And if my memory serves me correctly, I might have been the one who actually brought this to the table. Many of these reasons are valid. I think some of them are not valid, but the elephant in the room, of course, is the software. And I get that because I see now that golf is having a lot of problems getting the lottery system to work properly. I can no longer search. If I'm adding somebody to my lottery request, I can no longer search on their rec card number. I have to search on their name. And then when I do search on their name, a rec card number shows up and it's got an M at the end of it. I don't know what the M is. This is something new. But if I tried to search on the rec card number with the M, that's not working. The emails that announce people's lottery awards, sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. So I acknowledge in a very large way that all other things aside, the IT problem, given the complexity of the community, is probably the deal breaker in this instance. And me personally, I've changed my opinion, and I do not think that this is a good idea. However, this does not solve the problem of there are lots of people in this community who probably do pay in cash. They come in and they write checks to pay their annual dues. That's a very good example. Those people are paying a credit card fee whether they like it or not, because again, it's built into the cost of the transaction. So all things being considered, can we not implement a program where someone comes in and wants to put $500, arbitrary number, onto their member credit account, wants to pay with a check, and instead of getting $500, they get a credit of $500 plus 2% or 2.5% into their member credit account. In other words, instead of getting some cash back by using a credit card, they're getting cash back by paying with a check and putting the money in member credit. And that's all you can address that.
I don't know if that's something we would address. I mean, I think that's a issue we would either adjust the rate to make the rate less inclusive of a fee. I think that's something we as a committee can take in consideration when we deliberate on this. Okay. Did I see Gary? Did you have a question? No. Wait. Okay.
I had another one, Dick.
Okay. Let me go back to. I'll go back to Karen, and then we'll open it up to the. Go ahead, Christy. Director Novello.
Thank you. Just to sort of follow up on some of what Mr. Bagnano was just saying, I do believe you're the first person who brought it up to our committee's attention, but I'm glad that you did. And I was an ardent supporter, and I too have changed my mind after reviewing all the difficulties, right? It doesn't mean it's not a good idea. That was a double negative. But we're restricted by this, by our technology challenges right now. We know that. We've talked about it before. I guess my following up, though, to what Katie was saying. Katie, it's thank you for saying, you know, we do want to give you time to come back. We will need that answer. Would you please plan on giving us an update at every committee meeting on the progress toward that objective of having e-checks in some way capable, because by January, then we can start making some plans on recommendations based on that.
Yeah,
So could you do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do want to answer Frank's comment because I know he made it last time as well. So one of the challenges is, in my perspective, it's not necessarily the software. If we want to do surcharges tomorrow, we can do that. You know, there is a little bit of programming, but the bigger issue from my perspective is training. We have 280 part-time employees. Some of them didn't grow up with computers. They maybe work 2 days a week. And so when there's changes or new policies or new procedures, or even something as simple as a refund, they don't do it very often. It becomes a challenge. They don't do it right. IT support gets involved, or accounting has to come in and help with that. And so the programming for the surcharge is not difficult. We could do that if we know we're going to surcharge across the board. My purpose in that last slide was, do you want to surcharge across the board? And how is that going to affect people's behavior? Can they do it in membership or golf or whatnot? If they aren't told up front that they have been surcharged and they get the receipt and they check and they see they paid an extra $3, they go back to the starter and say, I want a refund, I'm going to pay cash. So now that starter needs to do the refund. And hopefully they know how to do it and they do it often. At the facilities, I assure you, they don't do it very often. They mostly take member credit. And so the struggle with reinforcing that training to do the refunds, to do it right, to know how to troubleshoot it if it doesn't go right, I think is going to frustrate the employees, and it's going to frustrate the people who are paying, who didn't realize, didn't hear them that there was a surcharge. Now they're waiting in line to get a refund. So it is a technology challenge, but I think as much of that, it's an employee challenge. And to Frank's point,
Katie, I hate to interrupt you. I appreciate everything you're saying. Everything you're saying are the things that we want to deliberate on.
Okay.
And I think we understand that. So at that, I do appreciate it, but I want to go ahead and move on.
Okay.
If I could. We have one more comment from Mr. Parsons, so then we will open it up to floor, and we have someone online that wants to make a comment.
This is just more of a comment than a question, but I want to go back to 15, slide 15 again. This is the offset, right, for trying to cover the cost of credit card fees, right? This is the offset. This is what it would cost. Yeah, it's the cost of setting this up. And to try to make an informed decision here without knowing what is this cost, it's difficult. And I think we heard last meeting from Cliff, it was, 570,000, to the processing companies. But it would, to avoid that, I think he used the number of 300,000 to implement all this. So it's important to understand what this number is, I think, to make a decision here, because it all comes down to money. But anyway.
So what we would ask is, as soon as you can come up with estimates.
An offset?
Yes, we would like very much to hear that. So now I'm going to open.
Dick, before you do, I have one last comment. Clearly, you have a complex software situation. Many of us in our various professional capacities worked at places where, for lack of a better way to describe it, we worked with kludged together systems. Okay, I worked at a facility where we did basically what you guys are doing, is you added on and you added on to a kernel, and you added on in ways where originally was not intended to support that function. So longer term, even though it may be expensive, take the 20-year view out, you really should consider starting a new software program that's custom tailored. And it may cost us $3 million. I don't know what it's going to cost. But the more we keep adding to this thing, the worse its functionality is going to become. And sooner or later, it's going to crash. It always happens. It happened to us. So anyway, I would just encourage you, maybe you need to put a group of people together if you haven't already done this, and you start looking forward and say, what's out there, if anything, and move forward toward trying to come up with a new system that actually has functionality that can scale for the future.
Thank you very much. I would like to open, if anyone in the room has a question or would like to make a statement, this would be the time. Please proceed to the microphone, write down your name. Please address your comments to the chair, and I will then broker, either if I can't answer it, I'll broker it to one of the directors that can, or we'll get back with you. Please limit your comments, please, to 2 minutes.
Yes, sir, thank you. Bruce Lees, 135422. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate you attending. In comment to the credit card fees, this was a topic of discussion last year as well. It was bantered back and forth by the committee. Many discussions were had throughout the year, and it was essentially determined that the committee didn't want to deal with it, and they tabled the issue. And obviously, it will continue to persist until some resolution is achieved. I believe that it wasn't resolved because it is a complex issue and it has many moving parts. However, I believe that the $600,000 cost that the board decided to absorb as the cost of doing business, as it was laid out in the meeting minutes when those sessions took place, also precluded the fact that the initial member fees increase in dues was initially proposed as 2.4%, ended up being 6.1%. So I believe that it was basically a bait and switch. You did cover your costs by putting the burden on the membership. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Okay, Jolene Piaskowski, 132268. Good morning, board. Okay, Bill, on one of those slides you had, or I'm sorry, Dick, Mr. Rhodes, on one of the slides, he said bank charge for check and cash and check. Does the bank charge us for depositing cash and check?
Yes, they do.
They do? Seriously?
Yes.
Wow.
I don't want to carry on a discussion with any of the other staff
Okay.
members. Please direct to me.
Okay, so that's interesting to me. Then the other thing do you know who we bank with?
You're giving, no, I don't.
Okay.
But we do have legitimate banking relationships. So,
Okay, so my question is, the two clubs I belong to, we are trying to become more active in not collecting cash or check. So we have decided to take Zelle. Are you guys familiar with Zelle at all?
please proceed. We are.
So if you are familiar with Zelle, maybe that could be an option too that we could pay, because there is no fee on Zelle or Venmo, I believe.
So we'll take that under consideration. We are looking at all of the options, PayPal, Zelle, Apple, you name
Well,
it.
Apple has a fee. I mean, and
Well,
so
we're
does
looking at
PayPal.
those, not just because you think they don't have a fee. There very well could be hidden fees.
Okay.
Do you have anything else? Thank you.
Nick Turner, 131829. I'm a member of the Charter Clubs Committee. I've just got to say I'm speaking for myself here. I look forward to seeing what the estimated costs are of making the change, because from my own experience, my back of an envelope calculation is that I think in order to make this change, you're going to spend somewhere between $100,000 and $500,000. It's probably going to increase the annual IT cost by $50,000 to $100,000 just in terms of additional support and upgrade help. And you're probably going to save $100,000 to $300,000 a year. So my suggestion is spend your time preparing for a cashless future. Don't spend this money and this management energy and this management time trying to solve this problem, because I don't think you're going to get any bang for your buck. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Novello, do we have any person online?
We do. So we have Mystical Michelle, rec number 127597. This member states, so December for the e-check module to be up and functioning is what I heard. I'd like for it to be back on the agenda for the December meeting. Thank you.
Actually, I don't believe that's what was said. I believe what Katie said is that she's uncertain and she is anticipating a 2-month development. And she has agreed to return to update the committee on her progress. So I just think it's important we clarify that. Okay, thank you very much. We have one more.
One just came in. This is from Gary Bach. For credit cards, the savings of $600,000 will override other costs, such as armored cars. If it only saves half of the $600,000, it would outweigh any other costs since it will save money every year. Gary's rec card number is 1354345.
Thank you, Mr. Rock, for that analysis. We will take that under consideration in our deliberations. So, all right, thank you very much. There's no action that we can take on this right now. This is still in deliberation stage. So we're going to move forward to our next item on the agenda. It's a budget timeline. I have Cliff Swan on this, and I think I'm going to have to put Terry West on the hook here. I don't think she's terribly excited about it, but Terry, could you come up and just kind of introduce this for us? If you could come up here, can you do that or not? Do you have to do it from here?
Can I do it from here?
Yeah, yeah. Since she's running this, I guess we should let her do that.
So this is our budget timeline calendar that we put together every year. We go through and update it with the times, the meetings that all the different budget items are presented at. As you know, capital budget's been presented at all the committee meetings once already and will continue to be updated as we go along. Beginning in December, the staff starts their budgeting process on the operating expenses. And the first kind of review of that will start in February at a couple of the committee meetings for golf and sports pavilion. And the first presentation here at B&F will be February 20th. Then, as you can see from the schedule, the first governing board presentation, or when it's given to the governing board, is March 8th. And then public meetings will be April 17th and 18th for the public forums. And with a final governing board approval date of May 23rd. But there are 7 B&F committee meetings that the budget will be presented at for the operating expenses.
Thank you, Terry. I think editorially what I'd like to say here is this is the epitome of transparency. This is the publishing of all of the public meetings that we'll be holding where we will discuss budget. And I would encourage all of you to look at this and if you have to, pick and choose what you need to attend. So do I have any comments at all from the committee? If not, and just as a matter of record, I didn't introduce this, but this was item 3.02. Okay. Next item is 3.03, and this is going to be presented by Carl Wilhelm, and it's our proposed capital budget with the October revisions. So just remember, we looked at this last meeting, and you're going to see some significant changes in it. Carl?
Thank you, Director Rhodes, and good morning, committee. This is the October review. This document today is the same document that you saw last month with a column added for October discussions. You'll see the highlighted areas of capital review 30 days later where we might have had cost adjustments positive or negative. And again, we'll do this in November. And it's my hopes in November that it actually comes with a 50,000 greater value projected slides, so a presentation. As we narrow down any questions or need any further information. So today, as I did last month, the first section is our new capital. You will see that there is only one change in price, and that is for the Beardsley iron fence, 4 foot tall, fence around the park with gates, and the increase in cost for $10,000 more. Moving on down to capital in the reserve study. The blue is items that either I or other departments will manage, and then as we move down into the green, that is the golf side of the reserve study tool. So starting in the blue, you will see the social hall ceiling renovation. I am recommending that this get postponed, so that would be a negative $400,000 to the proposed budget. I am not getting any help or traction with architectural firms. I feel like I'm going to run out on the clock. This isn't an emergency. We don't have a ceiling in the social hall that's falling down or anything like that. It is a project that we would like to pursue. So again, with your permission and the other committee's permissions, I would like to table this and continue to work on it throughout the year and propose it again next year. Silvercraft millwork and countertops. I have been working closely with the club and the architectural. We have increased that limit this month to include $75,000 more worth of millwork and countertops. And I believe pretty strongly that this is about narrowed down as it's going to get. And next month I will present a floor plan and a higher level detail of this project. Moving on to the Palm Ridge indoor pool deck, you will see that I've received some competitive budget costs, and I know that the price has been lowered to by 81,000. But if you look a couple lines down to the pool deck outside at Palm Ridge, that area was a little bit under estimated, so that increased by 38. And in the middle, R.H. Johnson Lawn Bowling Facility sewer lines. It is my proposal to defer this as well. We've had some positive news. I mentioned last month that facilities maintenance team was putting a camera down the sewer line. We have found our issue, so the sewer line is in fairly good working condition. There are no breaks, but we do have a dip in the pipe. So once it gets just out of the outer edge of lawn bowling and into the landscaping area towards Meeker, there's a dip in the line, probably settling over the years, and that's what's causing our backup. So we feel that at this point, unless we do a major redevelopment, which you know that I mentioned is coming in the next year's discussions, there's no reason to tear out concrete right now and change a sewer, and there might not be any reason to do it if it's not accessible in the future. So if we have every once in a while backup due to heavy use, we have the tools to fix that problem in the interim. And part two to that is, if I was tearing out concrete to fix a sewer line, I would have put conduit in place for a future lighting conversation. If I'm not tearing out that concrete, there's no reason to add that expense to this budget. So these two items would be looked at again in a future year consideration. Moving on to social hall, flat roof stone. So you're going to see 2 or 3 areas of our rec centers that have a stone roof. Very detailed in my explanation here that these are restorations, but these unique roofs do have a stone feature. Myself and the engineers, they did our evaluation, as they do for every roof for me, before we make a determination of restoration versus replacement of a roof. 2 things have come to light. Our roofs are in really good shape, so the stone is working. But the option that I was given for a future consideration was, one, to defer this restoration to the years that it's possibly going to come due. You can see, maybe I didn't list that here, but we have pushed this to the fiscal year 29-30. So the 3 roofs with stone deferred to FY 29-30. At that time, I have a choice of pulling the rock back and putting down a seal coat, just as I was going to in this proposed budget. But the industry has changed. They have a new product. They recommend that I actually remove the stone entirely, and they have a 20-year coating product. So it's twice the cost, but the benefit is I get 300 pounds per square foot of stone removed off of our roofs, and instead of going to a 10, 12, or 15-year warranty cycle, I go to a 20-year warranty cycle. So that'll be considered in the future year. I want to see if others have used this product in other commercial locations and get some more news on it, but I thought that was encouraging. So no roofs that involve stone. Moving on, the Palm Ridge cardio equipment had a considerable increase to 186,000, so a 56,000 increase over last month's report. Activity center maintenance roof, stone, again, that is under the same deferral, FY 29-30. Activities, aquatics roof, restore, increased by 44,000. That is a typical coating replacement. The roof is in good condition, but is ready for a restoration, not roof replacement. Admin flat roof, an increase of 48,000. Just a sidebar note, since COVID, a lot of particular construction components have gone well beyond the reset in pricing that, let's just say, a 5, 6, or 7% increase that you typically see yearly in a lot of items. The roofing industry has reset itself by 20 to 30% across the board. And that's just a note. And Pete Finelli and myself actually have reviewed all the comments from our roofing consultants, and we have actually adjusted the reserve study tool to reflect that so that we are saving at an appropriate cost for future considerations as well. So just a little sidebar note on that, doing this homework and meeting with these roofers. So moving on down, we have the activities, the Palm Ridge activities and aquatics roofs, increase of 44,000 I mentioned. R.H. Johnson admin flat roof restoration, pricing went up 48,000. Lawn bowling benches, we set the benchmark at the medium cost bench. We feel that that is the best bench out of the three that we considered. Least cost, medium cost, most expensive. Last month I proposed to you the most expensive. So you see a savings of 14,154 applied. Kuntz UV filtration, Russ has investigated his system there, and there's no need to track this unit for full replacement. It will have a long, healthy life, and all he has to do from an operating expense is manage his parts and maintenance on that. So that was taken out. Spa building roof, flat stone, same thing as the stone buildings I mentioned before. Pickleball courts resurface. I've entertained 2 new vendors in the state and got very competitive pricing, and they have worked for us before. Generally in the past, they weren't available for coating, but I don't know why their business model has changed, but they offered us very good pricing in the future, and you'll see that reflected in the savings of 15,000 for pickleball court resurfacing. R.H. Johnson pickleball courts, same exact conversation, same vendor, 14,000 in reduced costs. Silvercraft flooring replacement with LVT, got a few competitive bids for budget purposes, and it went up by $4,300. Pickleball windscreens, a slight reduction, $1,600. Pool umbrellas has been removed. The cost came in as an operating expense, so not over $5,000, even though we expect the umbrellas to last more than 5 years. But after this cycle is done, we will combine these umbrellas with the ones that are on the pickleball facility, and in the future, they will be purchased as a capital purchase. So when you combine the two, it'll be over $5,000, and I imagine inflation, because I was just under the $5,000 mark for their purchase. And then admin services awnings, increased cost for the awnings was $1,000. Moving over to golf, I will do my best to, or ask Bill for some assistance, but the irrigation system has been evaluated, being evaluated cost-wise. They have made an increase of $743,000 for the Echo Mesa irrigation system. The golf maintenance equipment of 23 pieces have been reduced by $124,763. Golf maintenance vehicles, 12 carts and other vehicles, increased by $2,436. And then the Desert Trails parking lot mill and replacement, you will see that I was tracking asphalt at $52,000 last month after a conversation with the vendors. I do want to plan for stabilization issues, so we're projecting a cost of $135 in case 100% stabilization is needed. And let's just hope the outcome, like I experienced at Trail Ridge, I had very little stabilization. I did have 100% at Grandview, so I think it's best that I plan for the contingency of stabilization. And then just on a positive note, Beardsley's Arts and Crafts Building experienced 0 stabilization, so that all that contingency was able to be put back into the savings column. Moving on, there are no other changes in the golf program. There's no changes in allowances. And to date, we've completed the properties tours for Palm Ridge and Beardsley, and things are going quite well. So, and each time we do a properties tour of this area, we take this list and they review these items, just as of a piece of information for you all.
Carl, I do have a question for you before I turn it over to the committee. One of the committee members and I have talked, and we were curious, how do we know if there's a fire safety or any other type of a critical driver that would be behind any of these? You know, I mean, we talk about wants and needs.
Yep.
But I think once we talk about things like fire and safety,
So
you know.
when I discuss, let's say, items like torch, where I talk about how the capital process works for us, project planning process, safety is our number one. So if I had an item here that was considered a safety issue, I would have let you know that right up front. I don't recall ever making any of those comments for any of these items. I would say that the benches at the lawn bowling are probably the largest consideration due to safety or
Right.
the old benches wearing out, but anything unsafe has already been removed.
Okay. And one other thing, when we look at these, just for clarity purposes, the second column, I think that's blue, that, you know, it starts off with softball field out fence replacement. That's on there because it's scheduled to be on there, because it's met its expected life expectancy.
That is correct. So the difference between the tan area, which is new proposed items from whomever, and then going into the blue and green, which is items pulled directly out of our reserve study tool, that it is our determination that the softball field fence has met its useful life. It is not falling down. It is not unsafe. So this is why at all the committees, you financially, properties from the point of view, properties, you know, looking at it, walking the site, trickle down their recommendations to the governing board to ultimately decide, does that fence need to be replaced?
So we really can make the determination of want or need on this.
You can.
Does the committee have any questions?
I do. I guess.
Mr. Miller?
Dick, what's the scope of the discussion for this particular item?
How many more times are we going to see this?
So next month, you will see this list advanced one more time with any financial changes, and I will have a presentation of anything that's 50,000 and greater as an actual PowerPoint.
Okay, so just as a matter of procedure, we don't have to make any decisions today on this. You know, we will see this. All of the items over $100,000 will have to be dealt with individually by line item. So we will go through by line item and decide and recommend by each line item over $100,000. The items that are between $50,000 and $100,000, we can group. So we can talk about them as a group, but we would, for all practical purposes, we would look at them as a group, but we can discuss them individually. And we could even pull them out and make that as an exception. So the urgency today is not necessarily to start picking away at these, although we could. But the urgency today is to understand what you've done from a higher perspective, where you've pulled out some of the things that you know can be delayed. So does that answer your question?
It does, but I'd like to ask a couple of questions and make a comment. You know, after going through this process last year, I walked away from it somewhat dissatisfied. And it wasn't anything that any of the staff did, it was myself, because I was put in a position where I had to make a decision without physically seeing these things. So this year when the list came out, I started going around and actually looking at these things. And I haven't finished that tour yet, but I would encourage the committee that they need to go out and take a look at some of this stuff. So in my particular, I have two concerns on some of these items. One is the softball fence. I spent 30 minutes walking the softball fence about a month ago. And as you say, it's not fallen down. It looks like it's in really good shape, with the exception in the right field where we've extended the height of the fence with some netting, and the trees behind the field line are growing into the netting and tearing it up. So my remembrance, and perhaps I'm misremembering, is that when we replace the fence, we're going to increase the height. Was that correct? That is correct, 30 feet. Okay. And walking around behind the softball field with the exception of the right field area, I guess I don't see the utility or the need to increase the height of that fence. There's a big open area behind there. If people are hitting softballs over the fence, there's a gate out in the field where they can go out and pick those things up. This seems like an awful lot of money. And I guess the question is, if we extend this, could we not just, if the purpose is to extend the height, could we not go back the route of putting netting around the rest of the field rather than replace the whole fence?
I can't speak to the decisions of the past on how that came about and the slight increases. The level is 24 feet currently, and it's braced as somebody made that choice, that would be enough. It was understanding when this came about. It's already probably been 3.5 years of this discussion, maybe 4. About softball field improvements, and this one kept getting traction, if you will, but the comment, let's address it next year.
Right.
I'm Switzerland. I'm doing my due diligence. This is an expensive project.
Right.
It has to be done right. I can't do it nilly-willy.
I'm not suggesting that you do that.
I understand. So
I'm asking, what were the options that were evaluated, if any, as opposed to just replacing the whole fence? So the option that I mentioned was, could we extend it? Perhaps we can, perhaps we can't. And you don't have to answer that right now.
It's okay. So the options are a 30-foot requested improved fence with the appropriate steel supports, okay? Option 2, at a high cost. Option 2 is replace it for replacement's sake at 24 feet with very similar, like for like, or let time take care of the fence a little longer. You know what I mean?
Right, I understand. So when was the fence put in?
I can't answer. I mean, I have a feeling that that's original.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Need to, when we discuss these, if we would broker them through me, so we don't want to get into a dialogue between the speakers in the committee. So, does anyone else have a comment or a question? Mr. Bosak?
I'll address this to you, Dick. The irrigation system at Echo Mesa, seems to me that the $5 million price tag for that is very similar to what the price tag was for Grandview, executive course versus regulation course. So that was one question. The second would be the $743,000 increase. Is that based on the Grandview experience of putting that system in, where we originally did not have an understanding of what the cost was going to be, and we found out the hard way that we had to do some things differently?
Yeah, I think those are very good questions. Actually, ones that I had in the back of my mind as well. So, Mr. Schwind, are you prepared to respond to that?
I can certainly. Thank you. Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Gary. Yes, what we experienced over at Grandview when it comes to the turf removal side was a little bit more than we anticipated. And so with I don't know how many acres are coming out of it, I believe 17 or 18 acres are coming out of Echo. And so with the price of piping and everything else going through there with our consultant, Gary Brawley, who was helping us put all of that project together, basically dealing with the contractors and the subcontractors that he has on site, it was his recommendation to help us move that a little bit more closer to a real number. Todd's here. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, good morning. Just to add on to what, in the reserve study for Echo Mesa, I believe we had $4.3 million budgeted for that. Now, of course, Echo Mesa is is not as big as Grandview, but we did make some adjustments because of the price and services. That did go up a little bit. So we did learn a little bit from the Grandview project going forward. So there's a few other things too. We're looking at possible turf conversion over there at Echo Mesa while we're doing the irrigation and desert landscape. And did get some numbers. We're looking at about 22 to 25 acres of fairways and also green banks if we do that project, and that runs about $20,000 per acre. As far as removing turf over at Echo Mesa, we just mapped that out about a week ago, so we're around 14.5 to 15 acres of turf coming out over there. And at Grandview, we ended up with 45 acres over there coming out and being converted over to desert landscape. So we're still working the numbers a little bit. Hopefully we'll nail that down in the next couple of weeks. I did have a meeting with Gary Brawley early this morning to discuss that, the Echo Mesa and some changes that we made over at Grandview. So hopefully I can sharpen that number up here in the next couple of weeks and have that for you.
Was the turf conversion an unexpected, it was a surprise?
I don't know if it was a surprise. It came out in the USGA site visit report when Brian Whitlark came out, and we did talk about it a little bit about that would be a perfect time to convert over to one of the new varieties, whether it's the Tiff Tuff or the Tahoma. And we'd like to maybe do that over at Echo Mesa because it's an executive course, and so try it there as a start and just see if that's something that works for us and our members. And because I'd hate to do a full-size golf course like a Grandview or Pebblebrook and find out, oh, that wasn't a good decision. It doesn't end up having to overseed it because it didn't work out and those kind of things. So really would like to try to get that in on the Echo Mesa project. As you know, it's a par 3 or executive golf course, so it's only got 4 par 4s over there. And so, or 6, I'm sorry. Certainly would like to try it over there before we expand on that program.
So that would really be an out-of-scope expense?
Yes.
Because that's what we hadn't originally planned that. Is that the entire $700,000?
That I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that.
Well, I think that's a different issue. I do. I think it's something that the committee would be very interested in, because if that is out of scope from the original 4.3 million, and now we want to add another 700,000+ to it, we need to understand if it is out of scope and what the implications are if we do it or we don't do it.
Okay. All right. And I'll certainly get those numbers. I'll work on that a little bit and kind of fine tune that. And then
Yeah, we would like to follow up on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Carl?
And I am here to answer your questions, so I am happy if you have the questions and you want more detail on this project.
We didn't know we did until just right now.
Okay.
So, do we have, Director Bagnotto?
Have I been promoted? I'm now Director Bagnotto?
I'm sorry, that was a faux pas on my part.
Gosh, like so many other people, I didn't even need to run.
It would be Committee Member Bagnotto. Thank you very much.
Bill, you okay with that? I'm not a director? All right, let's get down to this. So, Dick, I looked over this, and for days, actually, I've been pecking away at it, and I'm of the same opinion that David is, that it behooves us as committee members to get a pretty good handle on what it is that we're actually being asked to approve. Sometimes the only way to get a good handle on it is to actually visit some of the facilities. I have done so. I've spent some time looking around, particularly on the very, very large items that are on this list. And I can say that there's probably a couple of them that should never see the light of day. However, in all fairness to Carl, let's wait until we have our next meeting and we see some extra detail on these larger items. I'll close by, Terry, could you raise this slide up just a little bit so we can kind of see the bottom numbers? The other way. Back down. I need the green. A little more. Okay. So if you notice, there's a few lines here furniture for the patio, $10,000, $70,000 in total for furniture for the pro shop patios. And I hope that this certainly gets taken off the next iteration of this document, because none of that furniture needs to be replaced. And I question if anybody has even gone to look at it. In particular, Stardust's patio furniture is virtually brand new. So why do we have a $70,000 allotment to replace furniture that doesn't need to be replaced? And with that, I close.
I think that we've come up with we've heard it twice, and I'm going to throw this out, Carl. I don't know if you can do this. Could we arrange a tour for those of the B&F committee members so we could actually go out and see these projects and these locations firsthand?
Yes, and I don't mean to sound cheeky, but join me on Tuesdays at the Properties Committee tours. I'm sorry, but that is the right time. First of all, as a respect to our valuable time, Russ and I are every Tuesday. We've completed Palm Ridge and Beardsley. I would make that consideration you need to also consider about quorum, so that's an issue. Okay, so Properties Committee tours are for that purpose, and that's why they notated as such. So, we're here to walk.
And we would do that. That would be
So I'd be willing to make up a tour for you for Beardsley and Palm Ridge if need be, but otherwise I encourage you that next week we're at Kuntz on Tuesday at 7 a.m. R.H. Johnson for the next 2 weeks at 7 a.m.
very good. Thank you. Director Novello.
I guess you could call me that. Just wanted to sort of build on that and say our Properties Committee, it's difficult for all of our members and for all the committee members. We have a lot going on, but if we can go back and actually look at some of those or participate, listen in on some of those meetings, the Properties Committee is also asking a lot of the same questions, and that way we don't have to duplicate everybody's efforts. So if we can make time to do that, that's another way to get the answer to several of our questions, because we're all thinking the same.
Okay, I want to open it up to, Todd.
Yeah, just one thing, talking about tours, I would like to invite you to come over to Grandview before we reopen if you'd like to see the irrigation project and also the desert conversion. I'd love to take you around and show you the end result of that project, if you'd like.
Dick, I have one.
One more, okay.
So Todd, this is a silly question to ask. So I live on Grandview on number 6. And I frequently see what I jokingly refer to as the golf cart parade. There was one that came by this morning, and there was like 10 or 12 guys, all single person in a golf cart. Who are those people?
They work for golf operations. In fact, I was over there when they went through, and they're just running the rental carts. They've been setting for so long, and they're just exercising the carts.
Okay, I wasn't
them ready
sure
for
if
the
it was
season.
the design crew that was out checking stuff or, okay.
No, that's the second time they've done that this week. So, yep.
Okay, I'd like to now, thank you. Carl, do you have anything else in closing?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions or.
Yeah, I think we've been through that.
Okay.
You do have another one? Oh, no.
We have several online.
Oh, okay. Well, let me open it up to the floor here first. We've just, if you sign your name and your rec card number.
Hi, I'm Veronica Karaback, and my number is 125281. And this has already been discussed, but I did question it on Facebook, so I decided to come up. The quote for the fence I thought was unbelievable. So I actually went out and looked at it, because I'm like, I drive by it, and it looks like a beautiful field. And I'm like, wow, this fence looks really good. But there's a safety issue, someone said on Facebook. So I was wondering what the safety issue, but then you said there was no safety issue. So that's kind of relieving. But I was wondering, and then you mentioned that the quote included steel beams for 30 feet. Were there other quotes? Not that I think it should be replaced, because just because someone's quoted useful life, it still looks like a wonderful fence.
Carl, could you respond to that?
Yes. So the current system is just dated, balls battered, and it's 24 feet. So years ago, when this came about, of increasing the fence height because balls go out, get hit over the 24-foot range, I can't increase that height. There were other circumstances of improvements in the tennis facility area that, hey, this might be a great opportunity to solve into a higher range. But it can't be increased, period, without having the right size posting, and it is expensive.
But you could do, like they put the netting up, correct, in the areas?
No,
Or you can't do that
I
anymore?
can't extend any higher than the 24-foot.
Okay,
I cannot.
okay. But there's no safety issue, and like you said.
There's no safety issue.
Then, again, like Dave's.
Excuse me if you,
Question
I
on just
hate to-
extending it. I'm sorry. The other thing I had then, like the $400 or the $400,000 ceiling, or
Carl, would you respond to that?
where did you get the 400? Because you said you were having trouble getting contractors, so I was just kind of
So
wondering.
last year when this subject came up, we had a meeting with electrical company, ceiling grid company, and a sound acoustical engineer. We met on site. We had staff, general manager, myself, discuss whether we wanted to even tackle this project because it started with as a lighting change. So kind of simplistic in originality, but the road led down to the only way to honor the committee, the properties committee that said, hey, we would like these lights changed out to modern LED and to a dimmable feature. It can't be done with our old ceiling. Other members of our staff that maintain that structure, they don't make those ceiling tiles anymore. The industry told me that they don't design ceilings that way anymore. So the only way to really have a new, clean, change in lighting ceiling is to put a new ceiling in of modern design. That meeting that we had, the guesstimate was $400,000. The meetings that I've had since then with the sound engineer and actual architectural, their guesstimate, but they don't have the available time to help me finish or hire them, they're saying $800,000. So to me, the reality is somewhere in the middle after doing more work. Right now, it's, with all the other competing projects, I think it's more important that I move on to something more important.
And then my last thing is are we able to look at quotes? Like when you get your quotes in for this, are they published so that we can go see what they are?
All of our documents are available for public viewing. You would make an appointment with me, come visit our office, and I could show you a quote.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay. And again, if I could remind everyone to address your questions to me, and then I will broker them, please.
My name is David Bennett. My rec card number is 137887. I just have a question. I don't do golf or anything, but I drive down Granite Valley Drive, and the road goes between golf courses. And they took the turf out, I see, but it seems like they're planting hundreds of trees. And I just wondered, there's zero escape they could do with just gravel and rocks and things. I just wondered, I assume maybe this was years ago that this was discussed, to replace the turf with a bunch of plants. So I know there must be a good savings in water, but you're still using water. So.
Yeah, I'm going to defer that to Mr. Patty.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good question. In fact, I was just over at the men's club at Grandview, and that same question came up, that how are you saving water when you're putting plants and trees in and you're watering those? A lot of those are desert plants, so in order to establish those plants, we have to water them right now. A lot of those will come off the water source in about a year.
Oh, okay.
And the trees, they're low water use trees, and again, we're watering them pretty heavy right now to get them established, but those will really, we'll dial those back quite a bit. So there's gonna be a huge savings. In fact, just removing the turf over there at Grandview, the 45 acres of turf, it looks like estimated of 150 acre feet of water a year savings. So that's huge. It really is. So I understand it just doesn't, you drive by and you see the plants and the trees and watering, and it just doesn't make sense. Well, you took out the turf, but now you're still watering. But overall, it's going to be a big savings.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So do we have, Director Novello, do we have folks online that have questions for us? We'll have one more. Yes, sir. If you would put your name, if you want to speak. Yes, you do. We need to make sure that we have captured all of our information.
Thank you. Bruce Lees, 135422. I'd like to speak a moment about the estimated cost proposal for the fence replacement also. I find it very hard to believe that the Budget and Finance Committee would be presented an expenditure for this replacement and not having put eyes on and basically taking the word of however this emanated that the fence should be replaced. $750,000 for a fence is exorbitant. I understand times have changed, costs have gone up considerably, but $750,000 for a fence is pretty outlandish. I understand new footings and everything have to be poured to support the weight of a 30-foot enclosure versus a 24-foot enclosure. But I would please ask the board and the committees to investigate this thoroughly, see where the orientation of the bids came from, and possibly do due diligence to actually put eyes on and see if there's other cost options or other things that can be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Those are very good points. Okay, Director Novello.
Yes, sir. We'll start with the comments from online. Scott O. Blander, 139839. Are the proposed new flat roof systems EPDM or some other new material?
Carl?
They are not EDPM, by my understanding. They are a restoration coating that I don't have that information available, meaning I'd have to do my research on that.
Mystical, I'm sorry, I scrolled too quickly. Mystical Michelle, 127597. As an example, use admin for costs. Please explain cost variance between roof restore versus replace. Are we talking 25% or 40%? And what would the warranty difference typically be?
Carl?
This is a great question. So our roofs are tracked by myself, our consulting team, and accounting in two ways. So I have all of our lists of roofed inventoried, and we have a replacement value for that roof in case it actually needs to be tore down to its original construction level. We review that cost on a yearly basis, and we make adjustments in the reserve study tool for that cost. We know that I also track the roofs as a warranty due to the reasoning why we do restorative values. So like, for example, if this roof above our head cost $1 million to replace, and the restorative value was $200,000 to restore it and gain another 12-year warranty, that amount in the reserve study tool is subtracted so that each time a roof comes up with the idea that it might be ready for a true replacement, we are not double savings. I would choose at that point to either do the restorative value and gain another 12-year life out of that roof, or we would go into the place where that roof would get tore off and replaced with new. And we do that review every year with the accounting to make sure that our pricing is up to date. And in this particular year with the reserve study analyst, Pete Finelli, we had major increases and we made those adjustments. And hence why some of these roofs were positively postponed, because they're not needed for restorative value.
Thank you. That was a very good question.
Gary Bach, 135435. What is the reason for the Beardsley Park iron fence, 4 foot tall, and gates? There's not been a fence since Beardsley was built, so why is one needed now? Dick?
I'm going to have to defer that again to Carl.
So, believe it or not, there is a fence that exists at Beardsley. It's just not a permanent fence. So you'll notice that it's a T-post fence that staff has to pound fence posts in the ground every season for the heavy event season. And it gets a snow fence, generally in the color of green. If you were to go there now, you would see that fence. Weather and people damage that fence often. They're not cheap. They're not crazy expensive either. But we felt that instead of the impact to our staff of having to do the seasonally setup and tear downs during our high event season, which is approximately 2 times a year, tear down, set up, and then a tear down and set up again later in the new year. This cost reflects what a permanent fence. The fence would be nicely designed. It would meander within our landscaping and tie in the park and have the appropriate gate openings so that vehicle access and controllability for event ticketing, showing up to the event would be controlled.
So we're talking crowd control.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes? Mystical Michelle, 127597. I am concerned about the cost of the softball fence. How many bids were received and what other options were reviewed? Cost of adding netting versus replacement, restore or replace. Again, I understand that some of these may be redundant. We just want to allow our residents to speak.
Yeah, if you could briefly answer that, Carl.
Yep, so I want to clarify too on the nice lady that came up and asked the questions about the fence as well. The bids I have are from the past, being amortized or inflated by inflation, and currently I have it in the lap of a vendor, making sure that over these next 2 months that I get the best understanding of cost. So right now, my old price is based off of Adams Fence. They were the vendor that worked for a primary general contractor, General Acrylics. General Acrylics is not in the fence business, but they are in the sports field business. So I have to find both components because, part of the AstroTurf has to be pulled back. They are the ones that installed that AstroTurf. So I'm kind of pigeonholed in who I get to use. So Adams Fence is no longer a viable vendor. I think they've gone out of business. So right now, General Acrylics is working with me with a new fence company, and we're in the middle of that.
Thank you. That's it?
No? Mystical Michelle, 127597 has a comment. If there are no safety issues, then there's space for long balls over the fence, then I am at a loss as to why this is on the budget.
I'm not sure how I can respond to that other than this is it's a scheduled replacement, and we'll make a determination if we feel that it's necessary. I mean, we haven't gone through the discernment if it's going to meet the criteria or not. So,
If I can shed a little light on the softball scenario.
Please do.
Todd and I were out there recently looking at the overseed, and it's a wonderful facility. I mean, bar none, man, that is a beautiful softball field. But over time, that fence has grown, right? At one point, it was 10 feet. Home run, home run, home run. And it has gone up to 15 feet. It's gone up to 20. Now it's at 24 feet with netting in right field, as was depicted. Today's game, today's athlete have changed. Believe it or not, the players that are out there today are smashing softballs. Lots of home runs at the 24-foot level. And so it was the club's communication with us that as we can't really add any more onto that fence, we can look at netting, We can do other things. I was talking to Carl about maybe a 15-foot fence, and let's go netting the rest of the way up, right? But in talking with the softball players, right, they would like to see that fence at 30 feet. When you were young playing Little League, I think fields are 200 foot to the fence. It's about what we have, right? If you're building a softball field, right, today's standard is 300 feet. So we're 100 feet short. So in order to catch that, they need height. So to keep the balls in play, to keep the games going without just home run after home run after home run. So it's a playability scenario for the club members, right? This is really coming from them. And so if we can get away from the makeshift add-on to add-on to add-on to give them a 30-foot fence, would help them out. It would help their game. It would look good. The fence is aging. With all the signage and the protection padding on the bottom of that fence, it's not going to last forever. It's really kind of wearing. Safety? Nah, maybe not. I'm not sure I'd put those pads back up or the signage back up, which causes a wind block, which basically causes a little bit of concern over time with fencing. But really, it's a request from the club coming in to enhance their program. The conditions of the bats these days, conditions of softballs, the condition of the athletes is just rendering that field a little bit kind of almost unplayable, really, when it comes to what they're actually wanting to do. And we're just carrying the ball for them, no pun intended, sorry. But again, recommendations to this board, go to the governing board. Ultimately, you all make the decision on what's funded. We're basically just responding to a request and a need.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other?
Oh, yes. And I agree. It's great to hear from all of us and all of the residents. Anyway, Gary Bach, 135435. Do we need a backhoe? Looking at weekly rental of around $1,250, you could rent for 60 weeks at $75,000. At a life expectancy of 5 years, that would be 12 weeks a year and 6 weeks at a 10-year life.
Todd, are you here to respond to that?
Yes, the backhoe, that's what we considered a piece of shared equipment, which is used on all 7 golf courses, landscape, and also facility maintenance. So it gets a lot of use during the year. So I don't know if renting one would be the way to go, because it seems like there's always a need for one. One of the golf courses would be calling and say, hey, who's got the backhoe? I need it over here. I've got a mainline break, or I need to move something. Facility maintenance, the same thing. They're always in need of that. So I think the purchasing of the backhoe would be the way to go versus renting one.
And that's your recommendation. So that's what
Yes, sir.
And so that's what's coming to B&F, and that's what will eventually be forwarded to the governing board for determination.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Go right ahead.
One more so far, just a comment from Mystical Michelle, 127597. Thank you for your consideration. I appreciate you taking the time, as I realize some of these comments become redundant as the meeting progresses.
Thank you.
Just a comment, just a clarification.
Yeah, if you'd actually tell us your name.
Oh,
and
I'm
your-
sorry,
your
David
number.
Bennett, 137887.
Thank you.
Just a comment, just for clarification, the reason they're talking about the higher netting in right field is the houses are closer there, and the balls are actually going into their houses. I don't know if they're doing damage or not, but after the game, we've had people come and they were good-natured about it and give us the ball back or stuff. But and on the other side, there's like a park area or whatever. So even if it goes over the fence the same amount, it's not getting into the housing. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. Carl, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation.
Great questions.
And I really want to thank everyone in this room, plus all of the people that chatted with us online. This is something new for us, and we're really pretty excited about it, that we get to have this level of engagement with you and with those that aren't in the room. So I thank you very much, and I can tell you that all of the members of this committee and even the governing board members are very excited about this feature. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. I am going to take the agenda out of sequence, and I'm going to move item 3.06, the family pass concept discussion for Mr. Schwind up, and then Frank, we're going to drop yours down after that. Okay, so we have a change of agenda. Our next item is going to be item 3.06, and Mr. Schwind, the floor is yours.
Sorry? This was postponed from the September 19th meeting. But as you're aware, we have had some public comment relative to our fee structure and our fee system. And the issue of family discounts or family passes did come up. So I just want to go through this a little bit and for some conversation, communication with the B&F committee, looking for a recommendation maybe to forward on to the governing board when the budget gets approved as they approve our annual fees. But when it comes to our bylaws, as we sit right now, owner members, associate members, and holders of any tenant activity cards can purchase guest cards marked on a per diem basis to their guests, and so excluding golf and bowling, where guests pay a specified use fee. So guests are in fact allowed at our facilities, right? So our guest policy, FA8, that guest cards will be applied to the member's account, 1 per day per person. All guests must be personally signed into the recreation center facilities each day by a recreation card holder in good standing. Folks under 16 years old must be accompanied by a responsible adult at all times. You cannot check anything out of the library as a guest, and the member or tenant holding a guest, hosting a guest shall be responsible for the behavior and actions of that guest. So there are policies in place as to how our guests are to behave and act. So this is what the numbers look like. The last couple of years, we're averaging about 50,000 guests. Distinct members who bought guest cards, 7,767 of our 28,000 members. Of those 7,000, 27,000 of those guests were people under 17 years old. I'm sorry, that's true. So 2,700 of the 7,700 were under 17 years old. So a few youth. And so where are they going? Primarily swimming pools, right? 18 and over, 21,000 of those guests go there. Mini golf right next door at R.H. Johnson, and then other pools, 17 and under, kind of see the largest hits as far as where they are going relative to guests. Kind of spread out there for a table for you to kind of see what pools they're using and that type of thing. So ultimately, the quantity of guests sold as far as this year goes, 31,000 over 18, 10,000 under. And this is kind of when they're coming. So obviously we have a peak season. It's pretty much January through April. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. That's when the weather is nicest, and I think we get a lot of tenants along the way. So this slide was pulled out of something we did about 4 years ago when we were having some issue with owner member cards and little key holders that would allow owner members to access recreation centers. And then when they got to the monitoring station, the image of the owner was just about the size of a postage stamp, right? So the monitors were having difficulties determining who's who. And so there was a lot of transferability of cards, people who didn't live here, just a lot of card sharing going on. We were getting a lot of complaints from folks at the pool. There's not enough room to sit down. I can't get a chair. What's going on around here? And then we finally realized, well, who are these people? And so we did a little independent study of ourselves. I was relatively new here, and I went in, I borrowed somebody's card. I don't know if you know Tim D'Angelo or not, but I don't really look like Tim D'Angelo. But I checked in as Tim, and the monitor said, "Have a nice day." And I'm like, well, that's not me. And close enough. But you really couldn't tell based on the size of the picture. So more enhancements to our IT program. Now we replaced close to 8,000 cards. Now we have a policy, if your card is more than 5 years old, please refresh your picture. People change. So now we also have a bigger photo. When you show up at our monitoring station, you can really tell who that individual is. And lo and behold, you didn't have to buy any more chairs, right? People that were living in Surprise, living in Peoria, kind of coming over, using all our facilities, aren't here anymore, right? They can come as guests, but again, we have fees to capture that and that type of thing. It's not just a free-for-all. And it was huge in the Airbnb show. When people were renting homes, they were just leaving their cards on the counter, and there was an ad somewhere in here. I might have advanced it, did I? Anyway, as far as the guests coming in, same amount. Tenants and guests kind of run the same pattern with spike and time of year. This is the slide I was referring to. This was taken a couple of years ago, just off the web page, people advertising their houses. This is Disneyland for adults. Come and use our facilities. Come and, our fees and that kind of thing. You'll love our place. Use my rental card and off you go, right? So that was a big marketing thing for them. And we did clean that up. But a few years ago, as you can see, it was $3 a day per person to come and use our facilities. So annually, we present this at budget time during the operational portion of the program. You all, as the B&F committee, see this, make recommendations, moving it forward to the governing board for our annual fees to be approved and dealt with. Nowhere on here does it list anything about family passes. So this would be a new thing for you to consider and make a recommendation to the governing board as far as moving this forward. But again, right now, as we sit, anyone 18 years and under is a $4 fee. Anyone over 19 and over is a $6 fee. When it comes to our children's policy, again, the Rec Centers is a private non-for-profit corporation. Guests are welcome. However, all of our facilities are private, excluding golf and bowling. And for the exclusive use of the association members, your guests are required to follow all association rules. We would have to change the rules as far as that goes, as far as family passes, and their presence shouldn't really interfere with the peaceful enjoyment of the facilities by the other members. So guests under 16 must be accompanied. We do have designated times for children using our swimming pools as far as guests go. That's stipulated. And then basically, if you're not toilet trained or you got to adhere to a posting swim times, and children are not permitted in our spas. So we have a lot of things in place other than a family rate, if you're interested in that. So the holders, our recommendations, again, the holders of all valid membership cards must accompany all guests when checking in, and then tenants shall register all their membership and provide a copy of your signed lease agreement in order for them to get a card and valid driver's license, so that if they bring in guests, basically we know who is who. So that's really where we're at, and it really comes down to you all and the governing board's opinion as to whether or not we want to enhance our fee program and add another type of membership guest accommodation to our program. But again, the members or guests are really peaking at our peak time, and so crowds are an issue. I got to scoot out of here about 11.
Excuse me. Do any of the committee members have a question for Mr. Schmidt? Okay. All right. So I will open this up to the floor. No one on the floor? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know. If you would wait for 1 second, I didn't realize that Christine.
Sorry about that. In yesterday's operations review meeting general manager operations meeting that you hold, you mentioned that you meet with other general managers in our area as well. I don't know if this family pass concept or group pass concept has come up. Has it? And if not, could you bring it up to that? I'd love to know what the other communities around us may be considering, or what they've ruled out, what their experiences are in addition to ours.
Sure.
Has it ever come up?
It has.
Okay.
And so there's different angles as far as that goes. Some sell weekly passes that are like punch card type scenarios, and basically some just stick to the average. You know, we have a guest fee and this is what we do. So it's there, but we can certainly put that together for you.
Do you know if any of the fees are discounted, or is it just a regular, a pass where so much money, or, you know, I don't know how they compute that.
Right. There's a 7-day pass that I believe is discounted over in Sun City. The other ones, I believe, just have straightforward fees.
Okay, thank you. All right. We have one person wants out from the floor.
Jolene Piaskowski, 132268. Mr. Rhodes, what I'm concerned about, I think the family pass would be awesome, because you can see from Mr. Schwinn's presentation that we are busy from April or January to March. If you have any children that come, which I just did, a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old, and I paid $4 for them to get in, and Mr. Lewis, after 15, 20 minutes, is like, I need to go home. I don't want to do this. So if you offered a family pass and you gave it to us for $35 for the week, it would be a non-refundable situation. It would be something that if you have children, they're going to come and go, right? And we only have a 3-hour window at that swimming pool, the one that they really want to go to, which is R.H. Johnson, okay? The other thing is, I don't know, but I don't think we take a lot in family guests, in guest passes, do we? Yeah.
We actually have information on that. We had 2,700 passes, and you just multiply that
Right.
times 4 or 5, and that's the
Well,
dollar
it's
value.
it's 6 and 4,
Yeah.
and we are the most expensive compared to all the other facilities around us. And I know when I was at the GM Ops meeting, Bill said, well, you know, we're the cheapest for, you wanted to go to a pool in Peoria or miniature golf, that kind of thing. Except for I don't bring my family to take them elsewhere. I bring them my family here so they can see my facilities and they can enjoy them so they know I'm enjoying my life. If I wanted to pay for miniature golf or a pool, I take them on vacation. That's just my comment.
Thank you
I
very
like to
much.
see it.
You bring out 2 very interesting points, and I accept your comments. But there's 2 interesting points that you just brought out. One of which is, how do we define family pass? How do we define family? You know, obviously, I've received multiple emails from our homeowners that say, well, I have a family, and it's my brother and my sister, and, you know, so we need to define family. And then cost. You know, you have an arbitrary cost of $35. Well, that I see as an arbitrary number. So we have an established cost now, and that would probably be a starting point. But, you know, I think that those are things that we're going to have to talk about and take under consideration. So at that, thank you very much for your comments, Jolene.
Can I just make one other comment? It wouldn't change the fact that I would still have to check them in, right? I can't just get the family pass.
All of that's established.
Right. I mean, that's all established. So you're
That's
still
defined.
going to have to do those rules. Okay? So.
Thank you. Do we have anyone online, Christine, that has a question or a comment?
Yes. Gary Bach, 135435. Based on $120 a week, a $35 pass would be a 70% discount. I've almost never seen a 70% discount. 10 to 30% would be more reasonable. Any reduction would be absorbed by the entire community. There's another one. Same individual, Mr. Bach, 135435. If 100 people take advantage, that would be a loss of $8,500. At 1,000 people, that would be a loss of $85,000 that the community would have to absorb.
Very good points. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have completed that. We're going to move on to, we have 2 more items on here. So
Thank you, Frank.
we will take this in under further consideration and further deliberation. So this you'll see again on our agenda. So for the last 2 items that we have on the agenda today are policy reviews, policy FI01, accounting for capital assets review, and policy FI02, capital expenditure and budgeting. And Mr. Vignato has reviewed those, and I'm going to turn the floor over to him.
This might very well be the shortest topic in this meeting today, but the answer is there were no changes that I saw that might be necessary in either of those policies. And so my recommendation is to leave them as is.
Thank you, sir. So any questions for Mr. Vignato? Great, very good. So at that, we have, I'm going to ask for committee comments, and I'll start with Lynn Kellis.
Thank you, Deb. I think the one comment I'd like to say is I hope that we do look very seriously at the credit card issue. That my thoughts are that it's been pushed down the road since 2011. And how long can we keep doing that before we really get tangled up in this mess? We need to maybe consider doing a side meeting on it to work some things out, just my thought.
Just as a comment, we have every intent at this Budget and Finance Committee this year to have recommendations to the governing board. Mr. Miller?
You know, I would point out the fact that the B&F committee did make recommendations to the governing board last year in terms of credit cards. My own personal opinion about the credit cards is, you know, you're never going to make everybody happy, whatever the solution is. You know, my thinking on this has gone back and forth over the last 15 months. And I honestly am still struggling with what I think the right answer is. So, you know, I'm looking forward to the discussions. I think we will come to some recommendation, and it'll have a lot of discussion. Hopefully the community understands we're really wrestling with what the right thing to do is. And we're not going to probably end up making everybody happy. I just don't think that's physically possible. I do think that as we go through the capital items, it really does behoove us, as I said earlier, to go out and actually take a look at some of these things. You know, I'm going through a house remodel myself right now, and I just put a whole bunch of new cabinets in. And so when I look at things like surfaces and cabinets and things for the silver shop, and I look at what I paid for mine, then, you know, I'm kind of interested in, well, what's the quality of the cabinets? Do they have special work surfaces? You know, all those kind of things. And maybe on these items that are really higher ticket kind of things, we need to have Carl come give us a little more information than just a number and an item that basically says, you know, here's the circumstance. We've got to have stainless steel countertops or because of whatever. I'm really struggling with the lack of detail on some of these things before we're forced to make a decision. So, thank you.
Mr. Parsons?
Yes. You and I have talked about these same things with capital projects and determining which ones are really needs versus wants. And I'd like to really dive deeper into that as we make these decisions. I really like the idea of going out and looking at these things, you know, some of these questionable items. I think that's going to really help us determine which ones are needs and wants. So I like that. As far as the guest pass discussion, Bill mentioned, possibly, I think he said Sun City does a weekly discount for the families. Maybe that's something we should really look at a little harder. I like that idea. I have my kids come here for a week, and it does get costly. And so possibly a weekly discounted pass might be a solution to that. So that's all.
Mr. Billow?
I agreed with many of the other comments. I won't duplicate them. I'm going to, just a couple things. For a couple of us, we all feel the same sort of ambiguity, and it's not at all intentional. We need to understand more of the capital items that are included. So there are lots of sources for that information that we can exploit. I also want to remind us that as we're deliberating some of these bigger questions about credit cards and family passes, our job on all of the committees and on the governing board is to decide what is the best thing, how to implement. We can leave in the hands of our very capable operations folks with our oversight. But I'm just saying, we don't have to go into the levels of detail that many of us are tempted to go into. But we can decide or make recommendations on what should be done, right? So we can keep that in mind. Just an overall comment, I'm just going to keep saying it meeting after meeting for as long as I can. I look at the list of capital items and I'm astonished because we talk a lot about needs versus wants, and we hear we can't do anything with our existing technology system because of its limitations. And yet there's nothing on there that talks about I know that it's an additional expense, sorry everybody, but there's nothing on there that addresses that. And I would like to know why. Lastly, for all the things that we heard today, especially about the budget, because we're really diving into a lot of detail, I'd like to applaud the operations team, Carl and the whole team, because there's so much transparency in what was presented. It's so much better than last year. My first year of looking at it was last year. To actually see at every meeting what's changed and to discuss why. I really want to thank you guys for going into that level of detail and being so transparent with us.
Thank you. Right, Mr. Davis?
Yes, I don't want to take a lot of time and be redundant because I agree with everything that's been stated so far, although I do want to jump on the bandwagon, if you will, with Christine on looking for a long-term IT solution for the incompatibility that we have. I too have some history with legacy systems and how they grow and then become dysfunctional, and I agree with David that they inevitably crash. And so, a harsh word, but it's the reality of where we live. And also the consideration of looking for ways to mitigate our cost as it relates to credit cards. And at this point in time, I would agree that the solutions are too challenging across the board and specifically driven by the IT problems. But I think we could look at some of the things that Frank mentioned about incentivizing people not using credit cards. I think if we look at the cost of what processing of credit cards really hits the bottom line, if we could minimize some of that with a small incentive to use e-checks once we have that capability, or other solutions like that I'm sure each one around this panel would have ideas about. That's all I have. Thank you.
Nato?
Thank you, Dick. I want to say thank you to Christine. By the way, we both speak the same language. We both have O's at the end of our name. And but I want to thank Christine for doing a great job handling the online inquiries. This is the most I can recall that we've ever seen. And also thanks out to the community for using that as an opportunity to view and understand what goes on in these meetings, but not necessarily have to be here and still have the ability to ask questions. So clearly we did the right thing by allowing this to go on. As far as the credit card fees, yes, I did state a little bit earlier that I had gone the other way based on the technology and thought that perhaps this would not be a good idea. But then lo and behold, Katie O'Grady stood up there and she told us all that adding a line item for a surcharge, basically, if I understood her correctly, would be no big deal. In that case, I'm actually back to sitting on the fence about my decision. The last thing I want to bring up, and there's an elephant circling the room right now. My opinion, and I think many people will agree, is that in time, we will no longer be able to purchase brand new gasoline-powered golf carts. I do believe that the industry will eventually transition their manufacturing to completely electric carts, which would mean that when Sun City West goes out to buy their golf carts each year, and we replace about 20 per year, we're not going to be able to replace gas carts with gas carts. We'll be forced to buy electric. To the best of my knowledge, there is no planning in place for beginning to alter each of our cart barns so that when the day comes when we have to fill them with electric carts, we are ready. And so I think that this is something that perhaps we can put on next week's or next month's agenda, and perhaps bring Todd Patty in here and bring Pat O'Hara in here so that we can have a discussion. But we're talking about a very, very expensive electrical project to upgrade each of the cart barns. And if we don't start thinking about doing it now and planning for it in our budgets, we're going to get caught with our pants down, and it's going to be a huge sum of money. Thank you.
I would remind the committee that actually last year, we had a joint group between the Golf Committee and Budget and Finance, and I represented Budget and Finance on that, to look at the issue of the electric carts. And Frank has raised a reasonable point. And Pat O'Hara has a huge amount of information on the cost of moving to electric carts. And, you know, it got down to having the insurance companies come in and assess the storage facilities that we had or didn't have. And the reality is we don't have a lot of charging capability. We'd probably have to build new storage buildings as opposed to retrofitting. So Frank's comment is very much online. If we are forced to go down that pathway, it's not going to be a minor expense. The other thing, though, that was kind of interesting is that right now, if I'm remembering correctly, what the golf cart companies like EasyGo or whatnot, they don't want to sell you an electric cart. They want to rent you one. They want to lease you one. And the term of the lease goes for the whole 5 years, as opposed to we buy a cart now and we pay for it in 3, and then anything we get past that service life is just pure profit. So there's a lot of factors involved in that, but it's a good point. Another one of those long-term 20-year outlook kind of things that we need to be thinking about.
So I want to make a couple comments before we're closing. We've just heard all of our committee members talk about very complex issues. The credit card issue is the analogy of peeling back that onion, and it is never as simple as it appears. And I think we're all coming to that realization that, yeah, this is not a slam dunk, but we will struggle with it. And to respond to Lynn's questions, yes, we're going to have another recommendation to the governing board about this. There's just so many things that we're dealing with here that the whole issue with capital, I think the best suggestion I've heard is let's go out and look. So I know I plan to do that, and hopefully I can get with Carl. So at that, I have no other comments. Our next committee, we do have a comment online. Okay, thank you very much.
We do have several, so I'm going to go back, but they're comments, I believe.
Okay.
Dick? Going back, a comment came in on the credit card question. Scott Oblander, 139839, as the next generation moves in, credit card use and electronic payment will increase. And in Scott's opinion, they will expect to do all that with no fees. Let's see, moving on. I'm sorry, I just have to find it's long. Mystical Michelle 127597, the question of the family pass would need to be better defined as to how it would be implemented. Mystical Michelle 127597, I concur that this committee needs more detail on large budget items, as does the entire community. Gary Bach 135435 agrees with Mystical Michelle about the detail on larger budget items. Mr. Bach also thanks the committee for listening to the public and answering our questions. Mystical Michelle 127597, I sure hope Mr. Bagnato is wrong. I think a total changeover to electric is a long way off.
Okay, do we have any comments from the people in the audience? If you come up here, please, and put your name and correct number on there.
Thank you. Bruce Lees, 135422. I'd like to thank the board for taking the time to listen to our comments and suggestions. My last comment is going to be regarding the guest passes and the fee structures. We currently charge 2 different rates based upon age. I don't really know how that came about or why that is even the case. A guest is a guest. I don't care if they have to be pushed in a stroller or they're walking in with a walker. So in entertaining the guest pass conversation, I would propose that the board possibly look, or the governing committee, look at just a simple fee structure, the same for everybody. That may help the guest pass accountability as far as who is using a pass, if one is so much derived or adopted.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Okay, our next meeting will be on October the 24th, 9 a.m. here in the lecture hall. It is 11:16, and I am adjourning this meeting.